Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me the lovely Catherine Cribbs. Catherine lost her son Liam in June to stillbirth at 38 weeks and 4 days. Welcome, Catherine. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, thank you too. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to cry the whole entire time, but just the intro almost caught me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Take as much time as you need as well. Like, if you feel like you need to cry, that is a completely normal response. So if you need to do that, if you feel that that's something that your body is telling you to do, then absolutely do that, and we've got time for you to do that. And it just shows how real this is for you still.
Yeah, it feels like it's been so much longer than just 2 months. So it's the beginning of a long journey, but it's just crazy how your whole world and your whole life can literally change in seconds. Like however long it takes to say there's no heartbeat, it shatters everything. And yeah, I don't think it's ever gonna get less fresh, if that makes sense. Like anytime I think about it or anytime I speak about it, I think it's gonna be like it's happening all over again. Yeah, and a lot of women I've spoken to, they all say doesn't matter how long, it's always same. And with grief, it's like people tell you to get over it and there's nothing to get over. It's now carrying and incorporating this whole new journey.
Yeah, it's not about how you ever forget. It's how do I now carry this? How can I integrate this into my life? And then how can I still go through and find happy moments as well as honoring the sad ones when they come? Because without love, there is no grief. So without having that immense love, it'd be nice. It would be nice to go through life and not have these painful moments and have grief. But that means that you will never love. And what is life without love? I'm like, it's just so, and that's what it makes it so hard, because then, sometimes society on the outside, they're like, well, you can't, it's been X amount of time. You shouldn't be still sad. You should be, happy, and you should be, showing up in life in a
why aren't
way.
you happy yet? I love those comments like, oh, you're not there yet. No. And it's like there's nothing like this is my son is not going to be in my arms, but his memory is going to be alive forever. And going forward every day, it's a healthy balance of keeping that alive while still being the best version, right? And like you said, it all resorts back to love. Like I wouldn't be this upset if I didn't love him as much as I did. And nothing will ever take that away or change that. And society doesn't get it. They just want you to get over it. And we don't need to. We're going to incorporate it and make our mark. Like you made this beautiful podcast for people to be able, not for people, for mothers to be able to share. And it's so wonderful that we're in this community. Obviously how we got here is not necessarily ideal, but it really is there's so much support, and how we're brought up to grieve or view things is really not a realistic approach when something like this happens.
Mm. And like we were talking about before we started recording, like you're kind of just thrust into this life. Like you're not given a rule book, you're not given any steps in how to navigate it. You're not even told, oh, you will actually grieve. And I've heard
Yeah.
so many women trying to push that part away because they're like, oh no, I'm not allowed to grieve. I'm like, well, you would grieve, if your parent died, you would grieve even if your pet died. Why can't you grieve when your
Yeah.
baby dies, regardless of how much time you had with that baby? Like for me, it was only 7 weeks, but I grieved. And for
Yeah.
you, it was a lot further along. You had a lot longer time to connect and have this beautiful bond, but you're still allowed to grieve. But no one ever,
Yeah.
your society, like you said, just like, no, you have to, it's been a few weeks or it's been a
Yeah.
few months, get back on the horse.
Yeah. I know, and everyone wants to give you a pep talk too of all these things that you're looking forward for, what you should be, you know, looking towards, or don't worry, you can try again, or all the other really supportive comments that people try and make that really aren't so supportive. It's just, yeah, honestly, like it almost just boggles my brain to even feel how many women are suffering in silence with all this.
Mm, yeah. There is definitely a lot more than we can even comprehend. Like you said before, we see a lot. You see a lot in this community. There are so many women on social media that you can see, and then there's so many that we don't see. So many that
Yeah.
aren't feeling safe enough to share their story or wanting to put that out there, wanting to acknowledge it. And it is
Well, it's
heartbreaking.
almost like it's almost looked down on. It almost feels like something's wrong with us now. Like, oh, everyone's going to treat us differently. We're looked at differently. And yes, a traumatic thing has happened, but we need to move forward and we need to be supported the best way possible. And that sometimes we don't even know what that looks like.
Mm.
So, yeah, allowing that grieving process to show up day by day is, it's every day is a different day. So, forward is really all that can be looked at, really.
And moving forward, like you said, each day is so different. One day you might be feeling completely okay, and then the next day you might not be. You might feel like you're a complete
Yeah.
mess, and that's okay.
No, it definitely is. And exactly like you said, some days I'm smiling and laughing, and some other days I'm literally sobbing in my kitchen throughout the day. And it's finding the balance of when I feel overwhelmed doing those things that I know help me cope or help me, like going to yoga or going to the gym, to just be able to settle and let them come up, but also let them, flow through me.
Mm.
Yeah.
While you're talking, obviously the people that are listening can't see, but you've got like all these little quotes above your head.
Yeah. So I'm actually so I planned a home birth for my son. Um, Up until we found out he had passed, that was the plan and everything. And this space is like our upstairs kind of living room. And all on the walls, I wrote everything I'd made like a post on Facebook. So everyone wrote little messages and I covered the walls. And some of them are, I am capable. Every deep breath opens my body. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. Liam, which is my son's name, is working with me just as hard as I am. I can do hard things. Like just such beautiful, inspirational things. And obviously, with how it happened when I was in the hospital and coming home, I was so worried to see it. But when I first walked up the stairs and saw it, it's just, there's so much love. And like, yes, there's so much sadness. And that's what I really found when I went to the typical support things that the hospital gave out. Everyone was just very, very sad. And it is, but there's so much love. And like that, I know that's what gets me through and is going to continue to get me through, is just, it's not a blessing by any means to have something like this happen, but it all honestly is just so much wisdom and knowledge and love that to find the growth within something so tragic is so beautiful on its own. So to always come back to love and know that, yeah, I'm sad. Yeah, my arms are empty. Everything may seem very heavy. It's only because I loved so much. Like it's, yeah, it might be hard in the moment always to follow back to that, but it's so true.
Mm. It just gave me goosebumps, like
Hmm.
all over my body, because it is so true. And as long as you have that knowing in your heart, in the
Yeah.
moment, like you said, sometimes it is hard to just think of that, to go back to that. But as long as that knowing is there, when that hard moment passes, your natural response then is to find that love again. And I love the one that's just above your head. It says, in a world full of darkness, Liam is your light.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Honestly, like when I first got home that day from the hospital, I was like so nervous turning the corner on the stairs, and I looked and like I was in tears, but I wasn't in tears because I was sad. I was just so like full, and it's just beautiful. And as much as like stillbirth and loss happens to the mother and obviously the father, I feel like it happens to everyone. Like
Mm.
everyone that was involved, not necessarily involved, but who knew I was pregnant, involved in my life that I saw, like everyone was just as devastated. And it's just like, yeah, it's earth shattering. And then they say, like, oh, I didn't realize how, like, not popular, but how often this happens. And it's like, yeah. And we're literally, as a society, like almost grief illiterate
Mm.
because we don't know how to support people. Like, oh, you're sad. I'll make you feel better. Like, no, right now my son has passed. Like, nothing's going to make this better. You're not going to, like, like tell me a remedy from back in the day. And I'm going to be like, oh, perfect. Okay, I'll jump twice. And poof, it's gone. It's something we learn to adapt. And I feel when people see me cry, even though it's only been 2 months, like I think people think that's long or something, and they see me cry and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to upset you." And it's like whether you did it or I did it or whoever did it, like me crying doesn't mean stop talking about him.
Mm.
Like I want to speak, I want to share, and like it just makes everyone uncomfortable, and it's just like honestly dismissive to us, and it doesn't all make sense. And I find speaking with like I have a few mothers that I speak with and that I've connected with, and it's just so beautiful because they get it.
Mm.
And being able to speak to someone during this whole new process of life is it's nice to be understood. It's nice to be like heard rather than just dismissed and like, oh, you're still crying. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk to someone that goes, you know what, you're still crying. I get it. And then it's almost like this huge weight that is lifted off you because you don't have to put on this facade around
Yeah.
those people anymore, because you're just like, you know what, like I don't have to pretend to be holding it all together. I don't have to
Yeah.
pretend to be this person anymore around these people that get me.
Yeah. Well, life almost feels like a movie now because everything's in question. And a lot of things that you do, you're like, oh, well, what are the chances? And it's like, well, we've hit those statistics before. So, like, it's really just giving purpose and, like, myself, like, I want to just be able to help other people get through it because there's no textbook to this. Every day is different. Sometimes you're doing something, and, like, I know for me, I'm triggered off the randomest things. And it's for myself learning to see what the triggers are and how to better approach them that maybe that first time I see it, I am in shambles, but going forward, it gets lighter and lighter and it doesn't trigger me as much. And yeah, but I do think every time that like I speak about his story or the moment that I found out the words, like I don't think there'll ever be a time that I can't cry
Mm.
saying that. So
Yeah.
I think it's a false reality that society thinks like, oh, there'll be a day she's just over it. Or the best is when they say, oh, you'll have another one. It's not something that can be replaced.
Mm. And even going
Yeah.
forward in future pregnancies, like you've always got this at the back of your mind. There always this is the loss there, and your future pregnancies will be different because there's
Yeah.
always this thought, and like you said, and it also doesn't replace a baby. Like babies don't replace babies. You've had Liam, like he
Yeah.
is always going to be a part of you. It's not like you have the
Mhm.
next one and then he just gets pushed out of the picture.
Yeah.
Is
They'll
always going
know
to be
about
there.
him.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really beautiful. There's actually a lot of books written about stillbirth and loss where you can read to the sibling. So that's one thing I do is I still read a book, maybe not every night based on how life gets busy, but I enjoy reading like to Liam, even though he's not sitting with me listening. But yeah, it's just very sad, and I just really feel a lot of women aren't able to express that, and I couldn't imagine being even more isolated in all this as we feel like the only one. And well, I was that statistic, and just saying it doesn't feel nice, let alone how it actually feels.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to share a little bit, again, like I said before, just share as much or as little as you want, about your pregnancy with Liam?
Yeah. So when I found out I was pregnant, we weren't necessarily trying, but we weren't obviously not trying. We figured we'd just let it happen, knowing what would come out of it. And it happened very quickly. My partner was super not nervous at all. I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Who are we going to hire? How do we arrange? And starting to prepare. Um, Majority of the pregnancy was absolutely beautiful. I never really had any of those symptoms that everyone complained about. Like I was actually peeing on pregnancy tests quite often up until like 3 months because I was like, am I really pregnant? Like, like, is this really happening? I feel great. Like it's maybe just I napped a bit more than normal. Um, but yeah, and then towards the end, it started to get a bit more uncomfortable. I had high blood pressure starting. So right after about 28 weeks, I started to have like elevated blood pressure numbers, and my doctor's like, this is something we should kind of look into. I was seeing just my family doctor. She's like, get an OB, get them to follow you, let's do that. So I do that. They're following me. I also have a doula. She's been obviously following me as well, and these numbers would go up, they would go down. If I was like driving, they'd be high, and then come home, take a nap, they'd go down. Never really thought anything of it. Was flagged for a couple things and like different testings. No one really said anything to really worry about, so I didn't. And I was also taking, like, I got the doula because I wanted to have an out of system birth. I wanted to be able to, walk around, have a snack, maybe like go to the fridge, get some water. I wanted it on my own terms. Um, so obviously I took her opinion very seriously because that's why like I'm paying you, like I want those extra bonuses. But everything that I was facing from blood pressure to feet swelling um apparently was fine. Based on what she was looking at my records, everything was fine. The doctors, they're like, as long as your numbers are going down, everything is fine. So my last ultrasound of Liam alive was May 31st. So he was 37 weeks and 3 days, and everything was perfect. And the reason I had went for that ultrasound is because the day before, the doctor's like, go to labor and delivery, your blood pressure number is high, and like spend the time there, and then they'll probably send you home, but just go there. And I had also just driven 45 minutes in traffic. They didn't let me sit down for 2 seconds to rest. I'm like waddling around like a penguin because I'm huge. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, the numbers are going to be a bit high. I'm, fairly out of breath and tired. Um, so I said, like, please, if you could, just send me for an ultrasound. Let's double check everything is doing well in this. And as long as the numbers continue to go down after they go up, that's fine. She's like, yeah, that's fine. She sent me for the ultrasound. Everything was perfect. 8 out of 8, like everything was perfect. I don't even know how to explain it. Just reading it, not knowing what it meant, it looked perfect. And the doctor's like, all right, everything's fine. About a week-ish later, um, like I was always feeling tightness as I was getting towards the end of my pregnancy, and people are saying it's not the same feeling. He's bigger, there's less room, but this tightness and like pressure was just like weird. But also being a first time mom, everyone's kind of telling me it's in my head. I didn't think much of it. And the one night on the 13th, like almost 12 a.m., I took a bath, I did this, I did a whole bunch of different things, and I just felt off, and like I couldn't not get that feeling out of my body. So I was like, you know what, I'm going into labor and delivery. Let's get them to tell me everything's fine, and it's just in my head like everyone else is telling me. So I make that trip. I had went by myself. My partner had to be up at like 4:30, so I told him, "Don't get up. Like clearly I'm freaking out a little bit. I'll give you a call. Everything will be fine." And I drove myself there, found labor and delivery. They're like, "We'll set you up. We'll find a heartbeat. You know, like we'll do the whole 9 yards." The nurses start trying to find a heartbeat. They're starting to panic. In my gut, I had like not come to terms with what had just happened, but like it had already come over me. Like them telling me something would have been wrong, would have just confirmed it. And like obviously my brain is panicking of like, no, it's not real. But throughout my body, like I knew, like as they were struggling to find this heartbeat and they start panicking, I knew it was just going to continue being a panic because they're not going to find one. And then they're like, we'll get the doctor, we'll do an ultrasound. So I'm texting my partner, just letting him know, like, you need to like come here now. So as he's on his way, the doctor comes, does the ultrasound, and he just kind of looks at me, casual, it's probably like just after midnight, hospital's dead, and he just looks at me and he's like, yeah, there's no heartbeat, and it looks to be your baby's passed. And this gentleman couldn't have been younger than 60, give or take. And in my head, like everything was just processing. Like, I don't know, like I felt like I just went into a different world of like not even La La Land, because La La Land could potentially be nice and fluffy things. And once my partner got there, he was obviously in disbelief because prior to coming, like he just felt like, you're fine. I was 11 days to my due date. What are the chances that something's going to happen now? So he came back, the doctor, like I said to the doctor, like, can you please do it again? Like still in my head thinking, maybe it's not real. He does it again, and my partner watched the screen. I watched his face as I couldn't watch the screen again. And just in seconds, like the same feeling that I got, I almost watched on his face of just like your whole world, everything. Like in a second, it's gone. And there's nothing you can do about it, like at all. Like literally, and sitting there, we were both just kind of looking at each other like, what do we do? Like, what do we do now? And obviously, the logical thing is, oh, okay, well, now the baby has to come out. And that's a whole nother like thought process of like, oh my gosh, now I have to birth a baby that's not even alive. And we decided, like the doctor had said, if you want, which I thought was kind of almost comical and very insensitive, but like if you want, go home, get some sleep, and come back and we can deliver him in the morning rather than 12 a.m. And in my head, I'm thinking, you just told me my child died, and so I should go home and take a nap and then wake up, and then I'll come back. Like, hey, did you want a coffee? Do I want to bring you in too? Like, just yeah, that was a comment in its own. But when he said that, we kind of figured I was registered to give birth in a hospital closer to like where my family lives. We were at a hospital by where we live, which is a bit more north. So we decided like, let's go home, let's like pack a little bag, and then let's go to like Vaughan where my parents live, and we'll deliver down there. And maybe somehow this doctor's wrong, and like he'll tell us something different. So we did that. We came home, got a bag, and we went down, and sure enough, the third confirmation was there's no heartbeat. And I guess it's protocol, but initially at the first hospital, I had two ultrasounds to show no heartbeat, one for myself, one for my partner. Go to the second hospital, get another ultrasound, and then they're like, none of these are official. So I then got brought down to a different room in a different section, brought into a bigger ultrasound. Like it was just such a series of events that I felt like was taking forever. And now that we had established this was real, like there was no going back, like someone's not going to come in here and be like, oops, there was an error. It was done. Like that was it. And all the tightness I had been feeling was the same thing I was feeling sitting there. And so in my head, I was like, how long has this even been happening? Because I guess he was floating. So I'd sit down, yeah, my right side would bulge out a little. I'd do this, like, yeah, I was feeling it, but it was not him moving. So once we obviously decided that like I was gonna like try the to vaginally birth and everything like that, because they were like, we don't want to give you a C-section based on everything that you're going through. The last thing we want to do is add to your recovery and grief. So I got checked in. I did my final ultrasound, which was just horrible. Um, because it was like fourth time's the charm on this one. But yeah, I got brought in to the room and medication was started, but not the hormone that I needed. So pretty much a whole day of laboring, because my body naturally started going into labor, um, just from rejecting Liam's body. So after the day of laboring, the next doctor came in because she was confused that they hadn't started the, I believe it's called Pitocin. So she started that within another, I'd say, maybe 2 hours. I was then dilated. And then from the beginning, I never wanted an epidural. Obviously, I wanted to birth in my birthing space with like maybe a glass of coconut water. Um, so I didn't want an epidural. And all day, because I was contracting as much as I was and having such horrible labor pains, they kept pushing for it, but I didn't want it. And because I wasn't dilating, which I then found out later in that night was because I never had the Pitocin, I just kind of dealt with it. I was squeezing a comb, I was eating ice, like I was doing everything and then some. But I told the second doctor who started the Pitocin, I want to stand. I want to be able to move around. Like, I don't want to be legs in stirrups, dry pushing, hoping that, something happens. And she literally told me, she's like, well, that's not really optional. Like, you have the option to wait for the next doctor, which is in whatever the shift time is. So I think 6 or 8 hours. And she's like, you're going to be on your back, knees up, pushing, holding your breath, like just all these things. So I'm already defeated at this point. Throughout the day, and I was getting cervical checks to check dilation. Obviously, I was not dilating. The circumstances at the hospital, I was nowhere near relaxed and or in a space that my body wanted to birth. So it wasn't weird that I wasn't dilating. And the doctor that was on this shift actually broke my water during that time. So at that point, I stopped all cervical exams. And then having this woman tell me everything that you don't want to do is what we're doing. You might as well get the epidural because like if you're having this much of a hard time now, you're not going to make it through. And so now I'm defeated. I'm all over the place. I'm like practically like ill from how bad this pain is, throwing up everywhere. And I gave in the sense of nothing worse can happen. My son's passed. None of this medication is going to hurt him. No matter how much the needle hurts in my back, like it can't hurt more than what I'm going through now. So I opted for the epidural, knowing that it didn't matter and I wouldn't be standing anyway. And then after the Pitocin and I started dilation, they were like, okay, it's time to push. So it was like, okay, like what does that even look like? And they put my legs in these stirrups, and laying on your back with your feet up in the air, pushing against stirrups. Logically in my head, I want to extend. I want to push myself. She's telling me to go the other way, and I have to like bring my knees towards me. So it was very challenging. I believe the epidural did work, but I don't know to what degree, because they gave me like an additional button to push, and I felt a lot, and sections were frozen, but not really everything. As well as the nurse was in there delivering me. So we're pushing, then it would be like, okay, hold on, I'll go get the doctor. And it's like, I can feel what's going on. Like there's definitely like a baby like right here, right now, So that was quite a long process. Once he first came out, I was still like contracting. So I was kind of like curious of like, oh, I guess this is what it feels like. And then once I birthed the placenta, I felt like relieved in a sense, and like no more cramping and stuff like that. Once Liam was like born, my partner did cut his cord. They asked me like, do you want skin to send instantly? And I said yes. So I held him, and yeah, like it's so hard knowing that he's gone, but it was so beautiful that anyone who ever questions like, oh, am I gonna want to hold them, or those moments, I would take them, because even cutting the cord before I had birthed, I was saying like, oh, make sure you cut the cord, all these things. And my partner's like, no, like, what's the point? Like, you could tell he was very upset and just sad and just kind of like robbed of everything. And then in that moment of the birth, he said, like, no, let me cut the cord. And it's just like, you don't get those moments back. And although we don't feel like we have those moments forward, we do have everything that we did get to experience, right? And it's really like the amount of pictures I took. I look now back and I'm thinking like, oh man, like I kind of did do it, but you can't overdo it because like it's capturing a moment that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. And as much as like we said, it's so sad and so painful, it's so beautiful and so deep with love that that really is a nice, not even nice, it's peaceful thing to always come back to, because it doesn't discredit any of the sadness or the pain or anything like that. It just reminds us of why it's so strong, because the love was so strong. Um, but yeah, so once we delivered and had our time with him, obviously, like I don't know for everyone what different times were, but we spent about 2 hours with him probably, and obviously giving him back to go to the morgue was not easy, but we did. And we ended up going to bed that night. The next day, they wanted to keep me because, shockingly, my blood pressure was extremely elevated. I would assume with obvious reason, but they don't know my background. They don't know my family history. They don't know anything. They see this girl, stillbirth, blood pressure to like stroking out numbers. They're like, you need to stay here. And I'm like, I'm going to sign myself out. I'm going to go home. I need to cuddle my cat. And I just need to decompress. I was like, if it gets hot, because I do have a blood pressure machine at home, just based on I followed it myself throughout the pregnancy. So I was like, I'll monitor it. If I need to come back, I'll come back. So sure enough, I sign myself out. I come home. And coming home, like in being the mother and knowing that I had to birth Liam, like there was no one that was going to save me or come or like, like give me a pat on the back to tell me it's going to be okay, that would help me in any regard. Like it was up to me. So the hospital was like, I stayed together. I'd never had that second to unravel or fall apart or anything. It was like Brandon, my partner, and my mom that were like, they were a wreck, and with good reason. But I knew if I fell apart, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like I wouldn't have been able to have a birth. I wouldn't have been able to be present and be everything. So my body was just in survival. Coming home and walking through that door was just like pulling a string that has been raveled and just watching it unspiral and, kind of hit the floor. And it was just obviously nice to be back into the space, but it was the reality of like, wow, like this is like we left the hospital with a box, and inside this box are little ink prints instead of like a carriage or a stroller or a car seat or anything like that. So yeah, from that day forward, it was just understanding the new reality. And it is really easy to get down and, not see forward, but it's not like, I know for myself, it's not an option. And Liam wouldn't want it to be an option. Like I feel it's the brain, it wants, like our brains just want to attach it to like, oh, it happened for this, or it happened for growth, or, we were chosen, or this. And I really do feel that some things in life are just unexplainable. Like it's like somebody goes for a walk, they got hit by a bus, now they're a paraplegic. Things like that. That didn't happen to him so he could realize that he was, like creative some other way. Like no, some things just happen and they're just so catastrophic that it alters every day forward. And I feel this is something like that. And as much as my brain wants to put blame or reason or rhyme, there's almost like a peace in knowing that this just shouldn't happen. This is just shit, for lack of better words. I don't know if I can swear, but it's just, yeah, like it's the muck of the muck. But then in that muck, you're playing in love. Like everything around you maybe might not feel beautiful, but it is still beautiful. Like I know myself, when it first happened, leaving the hospital, I was like very, I guess I went through a little bit of like my bitter stage. And every time I would see someone pregnant, it would make me angry. And it's like, those thoughts and feelings, they're gonna come up, they're gonna happen, but for me, they're not productive. It's not productive to be angry that somebody else just got pregnant. I'm so happy for them. I'm upset at my situation for sure, but there's so much beauty and being able to still be around children and see them. Like I see so much of the love that I have and had for Liam in, you know what I mean? It's like allowing things to still be the beauty in such a tragic time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, and your through your tears as well. Such vulnerability and rawness. So I really do appreciate you being able to go there and share. And like you said, there is still so much as there is so much pain and heartache in that, there is still a lot of beauty and love that
Yeah.
you experienced in all of that as well.
Well, yeah, because it's always the question of if you knew it was gonna end like this, would you have changed? Like, would you have not have been pregnant? And it's like, I don't think so. Like,
Mm.
pregnancy and birth, although it didn't end how in a perfect world it does, like, they're 2 of the most monumental things in a woman's life. Like, do you know what I mean? Some women aren't even able to experience that, and yes, I didn't get to experience bringing a baby home, but it'll just make that time when I am able to bring a baby home that much more enjoyable. Like, pregnancy is so beautiful, and our bodies are like, postpartum is hard with no baby because 'cause you're looking in the mirror and you're like, "Wow, like, things have changed," and it's almost like it happened for no reason because 'cause you're like, "What the heck? Like, where's the like, we made it all the way here. This was the end goal." But then looking at it from the perspective of, like, what our bodies just did, like, we just homed and created a human. Like, nothing can take that away, like, we did that, like, looking at Liam when I was holding him, his perfect little nose and, you know, his little scowl and the little I don't even know what it's called, but the little, part between your nose and your lip, like, just perfect, like, the angels are so lucky that they have such a perfect angel, and nothing can take all that away, and
Mm.
that's not to discredit how sad it is going forward, but it's to enjoy those moments, and even birth, like, it's really incredible what our bodies can do and how perfectly designed they really are to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Um, how did you find sort of heading back into life after, like navigating your grief and being able to head back into the world and re-socialize and be, you know,
Hmm.
be okay, but still
Yeah.
being able to honor what's happening?
So, to be honest, at the beginning, I was kinda just like, "If I don't leave my house, then I'll be okay," which obviously is not like, at the beginning, the first couple weeks, like, I did take that time to just be with my partner as I didn't as much as everyone wanted to support and I had such a great support team, I wasn't ready to be supported. I was ready to just be around him and, you know, let it be whatever mucky ucky stuff came up that day and just go through it. And then about after, I'd probably say a couple weeks, obviously with postpartum healing as well, integrating back was rather difficult. And I found myself having to set up a lot of like different boundaries. Everyone in my life and my support team is exceptional, and I really do thank them, and in all this sadness, it is really beautiful to see the support and the community that comes together, with a loss. So, like, even thinking about it, it makes, like, my brain explode how society is really grief illiterate, but everyone wants to tell me how it's gonna get better, so it's really been explaining to people, like, "Hey, where I'm at right now is this just really sucks, and I am really sad, and some days are gonna be really hard, but I need you to allow me to show up however that looks. So if today I'm crying, obviously within reason, like, I'm not gonna leave the house if I can't hold a sentence, but if we're talking and I start crying, don't make it a big deal. Don't tell me I shouldn't be sad. Don't don't dismiss or belittle anything that I'm feeling because it all of a sudden makes you uncomfortable. And that was the biggest thing for me to explain to other people is, I get it, you don't wanna upset me, you don't wanna make me uncomfortable, but the fact of the matter is no one obviously wants to talk about dead babies, and it sounds horrible even to say it like that, but as much as they have passed and that statement of dead baby sounds horrible, there are kids, there are like, that's my son. Liam is he's my child, like, so, yeah, it might make you uncomfortable because he's passed, but it doesn't make it any less real for me.
Mm.
It doesn't make it any like yeah, and, oh, it gets me, like, all honestly, like, kerfuffled, for lack of better words. Because, like, as someone who's going through this, I wanna just be able to feel seen and heard,
Mm.
and that doesn't come with a pep talk or telling me what's like, "Oh, bigger, brighter things are gonna happen," or, "Oh, you're so strong," or, all these great things, like, yeah, I'm strong because this happened and I have no choice. Like, at the end of the day, I have to continue to go forward, so remembering it's all back to love is the only option, but then making me feel like almost like guilty for being upset still is it's backwards. And from their perspective, they just want to make us feel better because that's what you do. If you fall down, you get a band-aid or someone, makes you better because something's wrong. But with the loss of a child, nothing's like there is obviously something wrong with it, but it's not something that needs to be fixed or, made better. It needs to be exactly what it is, which is still our child and
Mm.
still our story. And I feel now as a mother, obviously I don't have the same duties as changing diapers and the typical motherhood, but it's keeping his story alive while still allowing me to live my life because it is easy to let things become really overwhelming, then it does start to affect everything. And I don't want to say that's not productive because I'm sure it looks different for everyone, but I know my son's with me and he's with me every day, giving me that strength on those days that I don't think I can do it. You know what I mean? And that's all coming back to the same love. And it's for me, I also enjoy seeing those little signs of that dragonfly flying by or, the butterfly that you've never seen before but decided to come by today and land on your lap. And yeah, I call Liam my baby moon. So I see him every night for the most part. And the nice, beautiful moon comes up, and just like the moon, it goes through stages, but it's always there.
Mm.
Even if you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
beautiful. And it is really hard to hold on to that and to be that strength for yourself when society is trying to change, like,
Yeah.
oh no, no, you should be here. And then you're every time it's like you're still trying to fight for that person that you are and hold on to the memories of Liam and honor him. You want to talk about him. It's like people are afraid to mention their names because,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to upset you. But you're like, well, I'm never going to
Hmm.
forget. Like they're
Yeah.
always a part of me. It's not like you're reminding me of my child, like it's my child. So,
Yeah.
I acknowledge you for that strength too, to be able to be so, like you said, you put in those boundaries, and the boundaries are hard because
Yeah.
obviously you don't want to rock the boat. And you feel like, oh, but you're like, that person's doing a nice thing. I can see that. But then you're like, you know what? You have to
Yeah.
put those boundaries in place for yourself.
It's
And
almost like a confrontation sometimes, and it's crazy, and it's people almost feel offended, and it's like, no, but when you want to support someone, you want it to feel supportive. So like not ever like I would have been one of those not I wouldn't say ignorant people, but like I wouldn't have thought about it. I would have been all nonchalant, like, oh, like don't worry, you're young, you can try again, or like, oh, like things are get better, because you don't understand the magnitude of this grief. Like we experience grief of like, oh, my dog died, or like grandma who was super sick passed, and not to discredit any of those things, they are very sad, but like I just grew a human and then I birthed him. Like I'm never going to just get over that. Every day forward is going to be like, oh, well, I wonder what this would have been when he's this old. Or, and even for his birthday, like, I'm not close to being a year from this yet, but I would like to do something every year. Like, there's no reason why I shouldn't or couldn't, you know? And I'm sure it's going to make some people feel very uncomfortable, and it's not meant to, but it's a real reality.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is your reality though. This is now, you need
Yeah.
people to understand, you need people to witness you in your new reality. And it's not something that you're ever going to want to hide away from. You're never going to,
Mm.
yeah, I just won't celebrate him because, you know, you don't want to. This is now who I
What I'm
am.
going to do.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is what I'm going to do. And you can be with me or you don't have to be.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you do experience this type of loss, though, it almost instills this next level of not, I don't want to say confidence, but it's just like this next level of something inside of you to say, I'm standing up for me even more now.
Yeah. Well, it
Um,
really it solidifies like the boundaries, and just like nothing worse can happen to us. You know what I mean? Like, this is the worst of the worst. So like, I'm gonna make sure that if something is making me feel something that I don't want to, or making me upset, or, you know, causing me more grief than support, like, we have to be able to speak up. And it's sad, but it's in this type of grief, a lot of people don't know how to act. And, you know, you may have some relationships that fall apart or fall at distance. And as much as it's sad, it's for the best, because it like this kind of stuff really does make people uncomfortable. And it's having those people that really allow you to show up how you show up, and that are okay with that, and not always looking the same.
so powerful. And the way that the way that that you can talk about it is just so beautiful. Um, and the way that you show up is just so beautiful. Just a couple of questions, obviously, before we wrap up. Um, what's, you know, one, two, or three things that you wish that you knew before or after experiencing pregnancy loss?
So I definitely would have wanted to know how common this is. And I hate even saying the word common, but how often this happens. Everyone always warned me about sleepless nights or dirty diapers, or, you know, like, you're never going to sleep again, like, your life is over. And it's like, I wish people would have spoke about, you know, there is still chances of this. And it's not to put in fear or anything like that. It's just to have awareness. And yeah,
Mm,
I think that would probably be the main thing, is just it being acknowledged as
yeah.
a possibility, even though whether it's likely or this or whatever else you want to consider it, it's still very real.
And I think if you have that awareness, you don't feel like you're in the dark so much because, you know, like you said, I feel like they don't tell you because of fear. Like they don't want to instill
Yeah.
fear in you. But when it actually is your reality, you're then questioning, why didn't someone tell me about this? And
And
just to
then
have,
especially when you realize how big the community is.
yeah. And you're just like, why
'Cause
couldn't they have told me, yes, everything's going along okay. Maybe when something's not looking, you know, right, just
yeah.
be honest. Like the medical system just needs to be honest, and go, okay, this is worst case scenario. Even, even as me experiencing a miscarriage, like I never even knew of a miscarriage before going into a pregnancy. And it was like, when I obviously, that was my experience, I felt like I was the only woman that was going through it. I'm like,
Mhm.
why, when it is so common, do I feel like I'm the only one? And if it is so common, why can't there be more awareness of it when we're actually talking about it with our medical professionals who are meant to be that safety net for us? So, I do absolutely agree with you. Like, just have a little bit more transparency in the conversations we're having with our medical professionals, with our GPs,
Yeah.
our nurses, and all the rest. And also, hopefully one day we'll shift the way that society views grief as well.
Yeah.
And like you said, there is just so much loss in this world, and yet we're still so grief illiterate. So it just doesn't make any sense.
No. And the worst part is they're showing up the best way that they want to be supportive. So then we almost gaslight ourselves of like, oh, but they're being nice. Why does it bring up all these not so nice feelings in me? It's just so backwards.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And where can people go to find you if they want to connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is catastrophic vibes. And I definitely share very openly this whole journey because at the end of the day, there's no textbook. And regardless of how it looks to other people, it's what's real now, right? And it's going forward the best way that we know how. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to thank you so much, Catherine, for being a part of the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast and sharing so openly and vulnerably, cut that bit out, your story and just being raw and real. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.